you live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. At least 22 dead in mass shooting at 2 locations across Lewiston, Maine. Suspect at large. President Biden offers full federal support.
Currently searching for a Robert R. Card, 4/4 of 1983 of Bowdoin. Card is considered armed and dangerous.
Israeli government holds war cabinet. PM Netanyahu says working around the clock before potential ground invasion.
The timing of the military's operation, the timing is determined by consensus by the war cabinet.
UN Security Council fails again to take action on the Israel-Hamas war. Both Russia and US resolutions fail to garner enough support. Pro-Israel resolution in first act from new US House leader, Republican Mike Johnson, elected for the post after weeks of chaos. And in ICC Cricket World Cup, struggling England meet Sri Lanka at Bengaluru today, while Australia thrash Netherlands on Wednesday. On to details now. First up, the big news we are tracking at this news hour. An emergency alert has been sounded in a country in US, Maine, after 22 people were killed and dozens injured in shootings. Police have launched a massive operation to catch the gunman, who has been identified as Robert Card, and asked locals in Lewiston to stay inside their homes. Local police posted a photo of the shooter, Robert Card, on Facebook, carrying what appeared to be a semi-automatic style weapon inside a bowling alley. And Maine's police also held a press conference where he said that mass shooting suspect is still at large and asked people to not contact the shooter if seen anywhere. Instead, call the emergency helpline number immediately.
Police are currently searching for a Robert R. Card, 4/4 of 1983 of Bowdoin. Card is considered armed and dangerous. He is a person of interest, however, and that's what we'll label him at moving forward until that changes. If people see him, they should not approach Card or make contact with him in any way. The shelter-in-place order that currently stands in Lewiston remains. A vehicle, which was a vehicle of interest in this incident, was located in Lisbon, and we are now also asking residents in Lisbon to shelter in place.
Well, US President Joe Biden spoke to the governor of the Maine County lawmakers about the shooting in Lewiston. According to the White House, they offered full federal support in the wake of this horrific attack. And DD India's Nick Harper reports for more from US.
But police and the FBI are reporting that this is a mass casualty situation. And in the US, they've also been showing images of the gunman or the alleged gunman walking into at least 3 different businesses in the town of Lewiston, the second most popular city in the US state of Maine, walking into those businesses wearing a brown sweatshirt, a bearded man carrying an assault rifle. And we are hearing that he then proceeded to kill various people within those 3 locations, including a restaurant, a bowling alley, and another location as well. And the situation being as fluid as it is because this gunman still appears to be on the loose. Police and various different authorities now searching for him. The FBI in the neighboring or nearby state of Massachusetts, in the city of Boston, saying that they are ready to give any assistance that they can. But at this stage, authorities telling people to shelter in place. That means to remain in their homes, to report any suspicious activity but to stay as safe as they possibly can and not to go out and about. The current tally is around 565 mass shootings for the year so far, an incredible number. And just bear in mind as well that the US government, with the Biden administration, has been calling for a ban on these type of assault rifles, the type of weapon that seems to have been used in this mass shooting as well. There was a ban in place that lasted for a decade, but that ran out. The Biden administration has been pushing again for that to happen. But within the last 2.5 years, the Biden administration has managed to put some limited restrictions on gun controls within the United States, but still haven't been able to manage to convince all lawmakers in Congress to pass that all-out ban on these type of assault weapons, which is so often used in these mass casualty events, as we're seeing here this evening in the US state of Maine.
And as Israel prepares for a ground invasion on Gaza, the Israeli government convened a war cabinet in Tel Aviv. Leaders of opposition parties have also participated in the meeting. The conflict between Israel and the Palestinian group Hamas entered its 20th day on Thursday. More than 7,900 people have been killed in the conflict that began on October 7th. And before the meeting, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu strongly said Israel will go into Gaza, but refused to say when. During his televised address, Netanyahu said that the decision on when the forces will go into Gaza will be taken by the War Cabinet. The War Cabinet of Israel, which was formed just 5 days after the start of the conflict, includes the Prime Minister himself, army personnel, and the leader of one of the centrist opposition parties.
We are raining hellfire on Hamas. We have already killed thousands of terrorists, and this is only the beginning. Simultaneously, we are preparing for a ground invasion. I will not elaborate on when, how, or how many. I want to be clear. The timing of the military's operation, the timing is determined by consensus by the War Cabinet. Together with Chief of Staff and the Cabinet, we are working to ensure the ideal conditions for our troops for the next operations.
And the United Nations Security Council has rejected 2 resolutions on the escalation of violence in Israel and Gaza. The United States and Russia each put forward a draft calling for the Council to address shortages of food, water and other necessities in Gaza. But Russia's resolution demanded a humanitarian ceasefire, something the US has not supported. Sally Patterson has more.
Negotiations were going on right up to the last minute, with the scheduled Security Council meeting pushed back to allow talks to continue. Russia had already said it would not support the US draft resolution, given the absence of language calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. The US argues any ceasefire will give Hamas the ability to rest and get ready to continue launching attacks against Israel. Instead, it called for humanitarian pauses to allow aid to get into Gaza. Now, Russia then put forward its own alternative text for representatives to vote on. Speaking before the vote, the US said their resolution was strong and balanced, and they had listened to all members. They said Russia had put forward their resolution in bad faith. But Russia said its draft wasn't political and accused the US of playing politics. Meanwhile, China accused the US of ignoring member states and having double standards, calling the draft out of balance. Both China and Russia vetoed the resolution. Russia's draft also didn't get enough votes to pass. This was the second time in 10 days the Council considered drafts on the crisis in the Middle East. It so far failed to adopt any resolutions on the recent escalations in Israel and Gaza. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
And after the UN chief remarks Israel has refused visas to senior UN officials, the United Nations chief has clarified where does this pact go and what effect could it have on the situation. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh tells us more.
after the UN chief made the remarks that Hamas didn't act in a vacuum, Israel didn't take kindly to it. The Israeli ambassador to the UN hit back at the UN chief, saying that he's siding with murderers and is justifying terrorism. And then the UN chief, in fact, the Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen, who is in New York to attend the UN Security Council's meeting open debate, cancelled his appointment with the UN chief, and they refused visa to the UN humanitarian aid chief. But clearly Israel made it very clear that it's not taking kindly to these remarks by the UN, though the UN chief clarified that he did not side with Hamas here. He said what happened in the horrific acts of Hamas cannot justify anything, and Palestinians are not responsible for it. So he clarified, and he said that those acts remained horrendous, and therefore it's very clear that it is a spat, but how far will it go, we'll have to see in the coming days.
Meanwhile, European Union heads of state will gather in Brussels on Thursday for a two-day meeting of the European Council. The leaders have a packed agenda, which includes the situation in the Middle East, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and agreeing the next EU budget. Alex Cardia reports from Brussels.
Well, the first order of business for the European Union's 27 heads of state and government will be to discuss the call for a humanitarian pause in Israel's bombardment of Gaza. That's a move backed by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Now, countries like Germany and the Czech Republic have been reluctant to fully endorse the move for fear of not seeming supportive enough of Israel, while others like Ireland and Spain have pushed for this to become EU policy as quickly as possible. It would appear that leaders will almost certainly call for a humanitarian pause after the meeting, a move opposed for now by the United States. But even if they do, whether or not Israel will listen is still unclear. Also on the agenda will be the EU's support of Ukraine. President Zelensky will address the leaders via video link, and EU officials insist that they have seen no fatigue from member states and that the bloc's support for Ukraine will not waver. Nevertheless, for the first time since the start of Russia's invasion, Ukraine is not top of the agenda at the European Council. Global turmoil aside, the EU leaders will also discuss the bloc's most contentious issue, migration. Terrorist attacks in France and Belgium have meant questions are being asked of the EU's asylum system, with many member states calling for tighter security measures to be rolled out. Finally, the EU's economy will be discussed, with member states poring over plans for the bloc's long-term budget. Here, again, some serious debate is expected, with certain countries reluctant to pay more into the European Union's coffers. In all, an agenda packed with contentious issues for the EU's 27 heads of state and government. Alex Kadeh in Brussels reporting for DD India.
And an Israeli airstrike hit a multi-floor residential building in Gaza City on Wednesday afternoon. Gazans were seen running away in the streets to take shelter and removing rubble from the site of the strike. Israel started its aerial blitz against Gaza after Hamas militants stormed the southern Israeli towns in a shock infiltration. An Israeli chief military spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, in his regular briefing on Wednesday said the war with Hamas will be long as Israel stepped up bombings of Gaza ahead of a ground invasion.
This war will be long, and in order to meet the goals of this war, we need resilience, we need faith, and we need patience. Military forces are deployed extensively around the Gaza Strip. We are ready on defense, on offense, and we are also preparing for the next stage of this war.
Well, the conflict is widening beyond Gaza, with Hamas in the southern front and Lebanon on the northern front continue to bound rockets. Our correspondent Amrit Pal tells us more about it.
The conflict is showing signs of widening. There is a threat of spillover, but it's already started showing signs of widening. Hitting Gaza was always the stated objective of Israel, saying that Hamas, because it's based out of there, but it's also the hits that you see in West Bank and the arrests that you see in West Bank are primarily the Israeli Defense Forces say they are Hamas supporters operating out of West Bank. Because remember, Hamas had won elections in West Bank also. They may rule Gaza or be the government or run the affairs in Gaza Strip, but they are also, members of parliament in the West Bank, though Israel doesn't recognize that. So there's the Israeli logic of hitting targets and making arrests in West Bank is that there are weapons being accumulated there, and there is a plan being made to hit Israel from West Bank. Therefore, it needs to act in self-defense. Hezbollah is continuously firing. Yesterday, rockets were fired from the Lebanon side, both on the tanks, and some fell in the open. Not much damage was done due to them, but Israel is responding. And in fact, if you look, Israel bombed, Syrian bases yesterday again. This was after it had bombed the Aleppo and the Damascus airports. So clearly there seems to be a certain spillover, but not the full-fledged regional escalation of which the threat looms large. That perhaps is not happening because there are international pressures. The US is working, US and the other Western countries are working closely with their Arab counterparts, with their Arab allies, primarily Egypt, Saudi Arabia, to see that it does not, conflagrate further. So that is where things stand, but the threat very much remains.
Meanwhile, Israeli rabbis and representatives of those believed kidnapped and held by Hamas fighters in the Gaza Strip gathered in Jerusalem to pray for the release of the hostages. The event, called a Global Day of Prayer and Unity, was organized by the Jewish Religious School and Institution Esh on the rooftop of the Old City overlooking the Western Wall Plaza. The ceremony was broadcast live worldwide to schools, organizations and individuals from across the international Jewish community to pray for the welfare of the abducted and missing people and call for their immediate release. Also, Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip has led to an acute shortage of fuel, which is hindering vital services. While a few trucks carrying aid are being allowed in, Israel has continued to block the delivery of fuel to keep it out of the hands of Hamas. The shortage is affecting the function of paramedics and civic defense crews in Gaza. Doctors in Gaza have called upon residents to donate any stored fuel they may have. The World Health Organization has warned that every hour of delay in delivering further aid puts lives at risk. And still to come on DD India News Hour. The world's first global AI summit to be held in UK next week as threats posed by artificial intelligence looms large. Hurricane Otis nightmare scenario knocks out all communications in Acapulco, Mexico. Halloween fervor kicks in. Knights of the Jack, the spectacular Halloween extravaganza, decks up Santa Monica Mountains. Stay with us to know more.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such changemakers. Watch Changemakers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. Lepak Shikuran. And moving on, Russia says it has shot down 2 long-range US-made missiles fired by Ukraine at Russian targets. There was no immediate comment yet from Kyiv or Washington. Ukraine launched the US-supplied ATACMS missiles for the first time last week, causing heavy damage to 2 airfields housing Russian helicopters and other equipment. Well, Russia successfully tested its capability to launch a large-scale retaliatory nuclear strike from land, sea and air. The development comes as Moscow moves toward revoking the ratification of the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. This exercise has taken place at a time when Russia is facing a standoff with the West over Ukraine. And Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has briefed President Vladimir Putin about the rehearsal of retaliatory nuclear strike exercise.
In lines of the Russian Armed Forces combat training plan, the training of controlling the Russian armed forces is conducted. The aim is to rehearse a massive nuclear strike by strategic offensive forces in retaliation of enemy's nuclear strike.
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the Russian drone strike in the western Khmelnytskyi region probably targeted the area's nuclear power station. At least 20 people have been injured in the attack. The UN nuclear watchdog, International Atomic Energy Agency, says the explosions caused by the drone strike did not affect the plant's operations or its connection to the grid. The United States, South Korea and Japan have condemned North Korea's supply of arms and military equipment to Russia. Both Moscow and Pyongyang have denied the transfer of arms from the North Korea for use in Russia-Ukraine war. This comes amid reports of movement of ships carrying containers, likely with weapons, between the ports of the two countries. North Korea and Russia pledged closer military cooperation during Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin's meeting in the Russian Far East in September. Meanwhile, in a remarkable move, US President Joe Biden and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in the Oval Office to strengthen the alliance, two leaders discussed key priorities, including combating China's rising dominance in the Indo-Pacific region, supporting Ukraine and standing with Israel in the wake of Hamas terrorist attack. While their strategic discussions encompassed crucial spheres like technology, clean energy, defense, and notably the groundbreaking AUKUS nuclear-powered submarine agreement. DD India's correspondent Nick Harper shares the details.
Well, China was very much in the background throughout the meeting between these two leaders and really in almost every agreement and initiative that they spoke about. They touched on technology, national security and climate change. And all of those areas were really about trying to counter China's influence. They spoke about AUKUS, that's the submarine pact between Australia, the US and Britain, with Australia gaining access to nuclear-powered submarines. They reaffirmed that deal. It was signed 2 years ago, but the US Congress is still in a state of needing to pass legislation that would allow Australia to get access to those nuclear-powered subs and the technology to build them.
I also see it through AUKUS, where together with the United Kingdom, we're making generational investments in our shared security. Democrats and Republicans alike understand the strategic value AUKUS brings to our nations. And I urge Congress to pass our AUKUS legislation this year.
Australia appreciates the administration's efforts to operationalise AUKUS and work with Congress to pass the legislation needed to realise our AUKUS ambitions. AUKUS will drive innovation and cooperation to provide the United States, Australia and the United Kingdom with improved capability to help secure peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific.
And they also spoke about trying to gain an upper hand over China in the Indo-Pacific region, specifically coming up with a new infrastructure plan, a co-financing marine infrastructure project plan to the tune of $65 million. Well, they'll be financing undersea cables that will be boosting internet connectivity to various Pacific island countries, because Australia and the US both see too much Chinese influence in those Pacific island nations. They touched on the South China Sea. They said that they strongly oppose the destabilising actions in the South China Sea. Biden referencing that spat over the weekend where Chinese vessels collided with Philippine boats. They touched on Taiwan, speaking about the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. And if all of those global issues here on Earth weren't enough to worry about, they also spoke about space, with plans for the United States companies to launch space missions from Australia in the coming years. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And later, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden hosted Australian Prime Minister Albanese and Jodie Hayden for a state dinner. Toasting to partnership and to the future, both leaders referred to their country's security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and their people-to-people ties during the turn at the lectern ahead of the dinner. US Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin were among those in attendance. And Robert Fico was appointed Slovakia's Prime Minister for the fourth time after pledging in his election campaign to end military support for Ukraine and criticizing sanctions on Russia. President Zuzana Kaptuwa appointed Fico and his cabinet after his party won the September 30th election and formed a coalition with the centre, left and nationalist parties. Fico quit as Prime Minister in 2018 amid mass public protest against corruption after a journalist was murdered. And Venezuela's Attorney General Tariq Saab on Wednesday announced a criminal investigation into organizers of a presidential primary election held over the weekend. The investigation, requested by lawmaker Jose Brito, will center on accusations of electoral violations, financial crimes and conspiracy, Saab said during a press conference.
En tal sentido, anuncio que
I announce the President and Deputy President of the National Primaries Commission will be summoned to be investigated. I am referring to Jose Maria Casal and Mildred Camero. They will be summoned by the General Attorney's Office. We will announce when, but it will happen within the upcoming hours or days. This investigation is already open and prosecutors have already been assigned, so to declare on these irregularities.
y respondan por esta.
And the UK government has released a new report warning of the threats posed by artificial intelligence. This comes as the UK is set to host the world's first global AI summit next week. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is expected to provide an address later today on the challenges posed by this technology as the UK tries to position itself as the global leader on AI. William Denselor reports from London.
This new UK government report focuses on both the risks presented by artificial intelligence as well as the benefits it can provide. The paper addresses a few key topics, including the safety and security risks of generative AI, the capabilities of this technology, and the risks that could emerge in the future. Later on Thursday, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is expected to urge the international community to embrace the benefits that this technology can provide, whilst also taking its risks seriously. Roughly 100 elected officials and industry experts are expected to convene for the first ever AI summit next week. The event will be held in England's Bletchley Park, where the Nazis' Enigma code was cracked. Attendees will hope to use the summit to help figure out how AI technology can be harnessed safely. The benefits of AI are boundless, but officials warn that the threats are substantial. Much attention at the summit is expected to be on the risks posed by non-state actors and the dangers of AI being used to conduct cyber attacks or create bioweapons. Participants will also be discussing the risk of losing control of AI and the potential perils if systems start operating autonomously. The summit seeks to build momentum globally for AI regulations, as the UK seeks to position itself as a leading player on the issue. William Denslow in London, reporting for DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The Keo Pagoda Autumn Festival 2023 opened in Thai Vinh province of northern Vietnam. The festival aims to commemorate those who made significant contributions to the Keo Pagoda's construction. During this year's festival, the organizers also showcased distinctive local one commune, one product items to the visitors. Japan's largest auto show opened to the press, with automakers stressing their commitment to developing electric vehicles. The Japan Mobility Show, formerly the Tokyo Auto Show, is being held in a major auto market where both domestic makers and consumers have been slow to embrace greener cars. And thousands of beautifully carved and illuminated Halloween pumpkins are drawing large crowds to the Santa Monica Mountains, which are located close to Los Angeles. Known as Nights of the Jack, the occasion is a spectacular Halloween extravaganza that includes carved pumpkin pictures of Hollywood celebrities, dinosaurs and aliens. The event uses between 4,000 and 5,000 pumpkins for the exhibit, and it takes around 25 minutes to traverse the course. The Halloween display is open until November 1st. In central Vietnam, to support agricultural production, authorities have assisted farmers in adopting new farming methods to enhance agricultural productivity. Farmers were instructed to switch from crop farming to shrimp farming and utilize straw and grass as natural insect barriers for their crops. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Cyclone Hamoon created havoc after landfall in southeast Bangladesh. And a bit relaxation for only some of the Canadians hoping to visit India. We show you glimpses of the much-awaited, extravagant and spectacular International Kullu Dussehra Festival. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and time now for a recap of the headlines. At least 22 dead in mass shooting at 2 locations across Lewiston, Maine. Suspect at large. President Biden offers full federal support. Israeli government holds war cabinet. PM Netanyahu says working around the clock before potential ground invasion. UN Security Council fails again to take action on the Israel-Hamas war. Both Russia and US resolutions fail to garner enough support. Pro-Israel resolution is first act from new US House leader, Republican Mike Johnson, elected for the post after weeks of chaos. And in ICC Cricket World Cup, struggling England meet Sri Lanka at Bengaluru today, while Australia thrash Netherlands on Wednesday. Well, after more than 3 weeks of a speakerless House, U.S. Congressman Mike Johnson has finally been elected as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The prolonged vacancy disrupted Congress's ability to function as Republicans faced challenges in reaching a consensus on a nominee. Mike called up a resolution supporting Israel in his first action as leader of the U.S. House of Representatives. Nick Harper reports further on the matter.
It's a funny old world, the world of US politics. 36 hours ago, hardly anyone had heard of Mike Johnson. Now, he's been catapulted to fame. And after 22 days, 14 candidates, 4 nominees and 4 floor votes, the House of Representatives once again has a Speaker. And that Speaker is a staunch Conservative from Louisiana. He's also the least experienced Speaker that the House has had in 140 years. He has never served in a senior position. He's never held a full committee chair. But he's now second in line to the President after the Vice President, a very powerful position in Washington. He's also one of the people who pushed conspiracy theories about election fraud after the 2020 presidential election. He backed those Trump claims that the election had been stolen from the former president. But now he's the Speaker of the House. After the last Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, was ousted just over 3 weeks ago. And then, of course, we had days during which Republicans were unable to coalesce around a single candidate that enough of them could back. Johnson's to-do list is particularly long. He has to deal with White House demands for more than $106 billion of funding for Ukraine and Israel in their conflicts. And then there's the looming government shutdown. The 17th of November is the date by which new legislation needs to be passed to prevent a shutdown. All of those things will be very difficult for a congressman with little experience, having served in the House for only 6 years. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Well, U.S. President Joe Biden has discussed the situation in Gaza with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In the telephone conversation, the leaders also discussed efforts to secure the release of hostages, including American citizens held by Hamas. President Biden emphasized on continuous flow of humanitarian aid to the civilians. And over 1,000 teachers, school personnel and public employees in the culture sector protested in Slovenia's capital, Ljubljana, against a government proposal that changes the pay system. The protesters are marched against the proposal because they say it significantly undervalues their work and professional titles. The teachers' union fears the reforms aimed at reducing pay disparities in the public sector will devalue their status and lead to lower pay. And India resumes visa services to Canadians for select categories on Thursday, a month after it had suspended following tensions with the North American country. The Indian High Commission in Ottawa said that the High Commission and Indian Consulate Generals in Toronto and Vancouver decided to resume visa services for 4 categories, that is entry, business, medical and conference. It said emergency situations will be addressed by the High Commission and Consulates General. While Mexican beach resort of Acapulco continued to reel from the aftermath of the Hurricane Otis, which roared into the city early on Wednesday as a rare Category 5 storm. It is one of the strongest to ever hit Mexico's Pacific coast, smashing buildings and vital infrastructure and leaving the city incommunicado and without power. Government has mobilized the military to help clear up the mess, with the main highway connecting Acapulco to Mexico City expected to be fully open by Thursday. The airport for the city of nearly 900,000 people was also closed until further notice. Well, the climate experts term warming of ocean waters as one of the key contributors to intensifying cyclones.
Otis, has strengthened at really an unprecedented rate, and seeing how quickly it strengthened, warm ocean waters really serve as an important source of fuel for hurricanes. They allow the hurricanes to become more energized and to strengthen really quickly. It's a key component. So having seen, that over recent decades, about 90% of the warming that's been caused by human-caused climate change has gone into our oceans. We've seen those ocean surface temperatures getting warmer. Certainly that was the case for Otis.
This is by far the strongest hurricane ever to have occurred on this section of the Mexican coast. And so there just isn't really historical context for this. And that's challenging because that's different than other places, even on the east coast of Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, anywhere in the Gulf of Mexico, the United States, Florida, Texas, Louisiana. These are all places very accustomed to powerful hurricanes coming on shore.
Well, from U.S., we shift to Bangladesh, where Cyclone Hamoon made landfall in the southeast region on Wednesday. It brought with it strong winds and rain, damaging hundreds of homes and killing at least 3 people. Houses and tarpaulin-covered bamboo shanties were also damaged in the Rohingya refugee camps. Most people were evacuated to shelters, but many families slept outside. Power supply and internet connections remained down. An environmental activist garnered in front of Bolivia's defense ministry to call for action against the wildfires that are burning throughout the Andes and generating dangerous air pollution in numerous communities. La Paz's air quality index has risen to 194, posing a health risk. Activists protested for a national emergency to protect biodiversity in fire-hit areas, including Santa Cruz and North La Paz. In Cochabamba, a cloud seeding operation was launched to induce rainfall. At least 16 active fires have been reported so far. And with the advent of winters, India's national capital, Delhi, has started witnessing poor air quality, with monitoring agencies saying any significant improvement is unlikely over the next few days. Air quality index stands at 256 in the poor category on Thursday. Following the weather change, the air quality in the region usually dips during the months of October and November due to many climatic factors and because of the stubble burning by farmers in the neighboring Punjab and Haryana. Moreover, pollution during the recent festive week has also added to the existing issue. Meanwhile, the Graded Response Action Plan has been implemented in Delhi, but experts say that it will be effective only after proper implementation.
Even despite implementing the Graded Response Action Plan, sometimes for few days there might not be perceivable change in the concentrations in air, and air quality still would be either poor or very poor. That is what is happening these days. One major reason is the interventions whichever we have in GRAP has to be quantified better. So this points out that maybe the GRAP has to be quantified better, and some activities have to be moved in a different bin. Also, this GRAP should be implemented for the entire Delhi's airshed.
And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to visit the western Indian state of Maharashtra and Goa today to inaugurate various developmental projects. In Maharashtra, Prime Minister Modi will launch projects worth over 7,500 crore rupees aimed at benefiting over 86 lakh farmers. PM will also go to Shirdi around 1 p.m. IST, where he will perform puja and darshan at Sri Sai Baba Samadhi Temple. He will also inaugurate the new Darshan Q complex at the temple and then travel to Goa to inaugurate the 37th National Games at the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in South Goa. Goa Chief Minister Pramod Sawant, Youth Affairs and Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur Nayak will also be in attendance at the event. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. The Enforcement Directorate raid is underway at the House of West Bengal Minister Jyoti Priya Malik at Salt Lake in Kolkata. The searches are conducted in connection with Malik's alleged involvement in a case of corruption in ration distribution. Search operations were also on at 8 other flats connected with the minister. The Election Commission of India will appoint Bollywood actor Rajkumar Rao as its national icon on Thursday ahead of assembly election in 5 states. The commission appoints prominent Indians as national icons to motivate voters participate in elections. Alai Balai, the annual event, which is organized every year immediately the next day after Vijay Dashmi, was held with pomp and gaiety in South India's Hyderabad. The cultural extravaganza brings together public representatives from all political parties and well-known persons from different walks of life. Telangana traditional folk arts and dances were showcased at the event. On the second day of the International Kullu Dussehra Festival in Indian state of Himachal Pradesh, foreign artists from 14 countries presented a beautiful display of the folk culture of the world in the cultural parade. Artists gave spectacular performances in Pahari cultural costumes. And still to come on Didi India News Hour. Hope for Michigan Ford workers to return to work after 41-day strike. And Asian stocks slumped to 11-month lows as higher for longer rate fears persist. And Goa all geared up for the 37th National Games to be held in the city for the first time.
Welcome to a happy place. To nature's warm embrace. Witness the power of faith. Fruits of hard work and protectors of Mother Earth. Unique in every way. Discover something new every day. A small state with big ambitions. And a bigger heart. Mizoram welcomes to love, laughter and celebrations.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and on to business news now. The United Auto Workers and Ford have reached a tentative contract agreement, potentially ending the union's 6-week-long strikes against Detroit's major automakers. The deal, which still requires approval from approximately 57,000 UAW workers at Ford, includes a 25% general wage increase over 4 years and an immediate 11% wage increase for all union members. President Biden applauded the agreement, emphasizing the importance of employers and employees working together for the benefit of businesses and workers alike. With the deal in place, the UAW could leverage it to negotiate similar contracts with GM and Stellantis. And in a wave of ongoing strikes, the United States continues to grapple with industrial unrest, with hotel workers becoming the latest group after Hollywood writers and auto strikes to sit behind picket lines demanding fair treatment and equal rights. These strikes shed light on widespread issues such as poor working conditions and healthcare deficiencies, challenging the American dream, which appears more elusive than ever. Hotel workers in Los Angeles gathered in downtown to protest for higher wages and better working conditions. The strike included a dozen more hotels. Workers stressed that they were fighting for fair wages, healthcare and dignity in their sector. United Local 11, which represents around 15,000 workers, said there is still work to be done with the remaining hotels. Implementation will continue until further agreements are made.
We hope they empathize with us. This is us trying to fight for a living wage to live in Los Angeles. It's getting really, really expensive to live here. We're fighting for pension, we're fighting for healthcare, we're fighting for the American dream. Everything that we were promised to work hard, pay your taxes, and be a good citizen. We just want our contract to be reciprocated. We want to be treated like a human being and treated fairly.
Moving on, a Foxconn founder, Terry Gou, lies low in Taiwan election as China tax probe reverberates. He last appeared at a campaign event on Sunday night, the day a Chinese newspaper said authorities had begun a tax probe into Foxconn's operations in China, even though he stepped back from running the world's largest contract manufacturer 4 years ago. Foxconn said in a statement on Sunday legal compliance was a fundamental principle of its operations and it would actively cooperate with the relevant units on the related work and operations. DD India correspondent Andrew Wood reports more from Hong Kong.
There's a lot of suspicion about why Foxconn has been targeted. One of the possible explanations is that they're trying to discourage Terry Gou from standing in the presidential election. Now, tax probes are great in authoritarian countries because they can upset, they can make life difficult for political enemies of the government. Another common one is to investigate for corruption. So we don't know that this tax investigation on the mainland is linked to discouraging Mr. Gou, but there's a good chance it might be. Now, Mr. Gou, as you said, was last seen in public on Sunday. He's cancelled some events this week. And remember that Mr. Gou is an opponent of Taiwanese independence. China claims that, says that Taiwan, which is a self-governed island, is really part of the mainland of the People's Republic of China and should be united with the mainland, if necessary, by violence, by using force. Many people on the self-governed island don't want to be part of the mainland of China, but legally they've never quite gone to the next stage, which is to declare independence for Taiwan. So you might think that Mr. Gou is actually would be a candidate that Beijing might favour, but the trouble is he's standing as an independent, and so there are three main candidates. The one who's in the lead at the moment, William Lai, is a vice president of Taiwan at the moment. He represents the governing DPP. Then there's the KMT, the Kuomintang, which is traditionally, well, in the past couple of decades, has been in favour of more links with China. And then, of course, there's Mr. Gou himself. And the worry is, certainly for China, that Mr. Gou will split the pro-Beijing vote. and that will make it much easier for a government that is more in favour of Taiwan not being united with the mainland of China getting into power.
Well, former crypto billionaire FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried is planning to testify at his fraud trial. Fried's lawyers told Judge Lewis A. Kaplan that he's planning to call 3 witnesses, after which Sam Bankman-Fried is also going to be testifying after prosecutors rest early on Thursday. The approach comes after weeks of compelling evidence that suggests he misappropriated billions of dollars from unsuspecting customers of his FTX cryptocurrency exchange. And US stocks tumbled on Wednesday as Alphabet shares slid after the Google parent posted disappointing earnings and US Treasury yields rose. The benchmark S&P 500 index notched its 5th daily decline, and Nasdaq Composite has the largest percentage drop, with interest rate-sensitive mega caps weighing heavily the tech-laden index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average finished modestly lower. Also, as US stocks suffer, Asian stocks also slid to 11-month lows on Wednesday. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan fell 1%, while Japan's Nikkei fell 2%. Alphabet shares slid another 2% after hours and pulled Nasdaq futures down by nearly 1%. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for some sports news. While going through a poor run in the tournament, defending champions England meet Sri Lanka today in the ongoing ICC Men's World Cup in Bengaluru. England have 2 points from 4 matches in this World Cup. Both teams have struggled to find their footing. The defending champions have had a disappointing campaign marked by batting and bowling issues and currently sit in 9th place on the table. For England to avoid an early exit from the tournament, they need significant improvements in their batting lineup. They have struggled with their batting, with only David Malan and Joe Root making significant contributions in recent matches, while Sri Lanka is also dealing with injuries and inconsistent performances. Their bowling has been leaky and they have conceded high scores in previous matches. Despite winning against the Netherlands, they are not in great form. The clash will start at 2 p.m. IST or 8:30 a.m. GMT. Well, BCCI has appointed domestic stalwart turned coach Amol Majumdar as the head coach of India women's cricket team. Majumdar will thus fill in a position that has been vacant since December last year. Despite the Cricket Advisory Committee completing the process almost 6 months ago, the Board of Control for Cricket in India formally announced Majumdar's appointment on Wednesday. Having retired as the second highest run getter in the Ranji Trophy, Majumdar has been a part of Mumbai's 8 Ranji titles during his 16 seasons with the domestic powerhouse. After representing Assam and Andhra for 5 more years, Majumdar has emerged as a successful coach. Over the last decade, he has taken up several coaching responsibilities. And on to the Asian Para Games in Hangzhou, China. Narayan Thakur won the bronze medal in the men's 100 T35 event on Thursday. Thakur registered a timing of 14.37 to secure a podium finish in this event. It was also his second medal at the ongoing Games. And Goa is all set to host the International Games for the first time. The Games will be held in Goa from October 26th to November 9th in 2023. Goa has made extensive arrangements in the run-up to the grand opening ceremony that will witness Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurating the sporting extravaganza. Well, DD India correspondent Suchitra Bharadwaj joins us from Goa. Well, Suchitra, Goa has been waiting for long for this since almost 2015. I'm sure too much excitement in the air, and the big day has finally arrived. What all has been planned for the opening ceremony today?
Yes, Lipakshi, finally Goa's long wait to host the National Games is over. This is the first time Goa is hosting the National Games, and this is the biggest edition. If we talk about the dimensions, this is the biggest edition of the National Games with more than 10,000 athletes participating, and 43 sports will take place during these National Games. So there's a lot of excitement in Goa for these games, and these games are being organized all across Goa in 5 cities and 28 venues. So, wherever you go in Goa, you will see the hoardings related to national games, and you will come across a venue after a few kilometers in Goa. So Goa is totally colored in the colors of the national games, and the next 2 weeks are going to be action-packed for the Goans and for the sports lovers. Lipakshi.
Also, Suchitra, it's being said that 49% of the athletes from various countries are women. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, Lipakshi, of late we have seen that the importance in gender equality has been given in sports, be it the participation, be it the prize money, and in this edition of national games we can see that the 49% of the participants are female. So, we can say that almost equal participation for male and female, and it augurs well for Indian sports, because we have seen in international events, be it Olympics, be in Asian Games, be in Commonwealth Games, that our women athletes have performed, if not equally, we can say better than men. So, with more female athletes participating in national games, we will see the emergence of more female athletes at national level, and they will definitely go on to win international medals, international events for India. Lipakshi.
I'm sure for that. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us that update from there, Suchitra. And moving on to soccer, Manchester City maintained their perfect Champions League record with a hard-fought win at Young Boys by 3-1. Erling Haaland scored twice in the second half, his first Champions League goals in 6 games, first with a penalty, then a fine curling effort. Reigning champion City had dominated proceedings and led in the 48th minute when Manuel Akanji tapped in. Then Haaland's 67th minute penalty, followed by his second with 4 minutes remaining, ensured City remained top of Group G with 9 points from 3 games. And Kylian Mbappe was on target as Paris Saint-Germain went top of Group F with a clinical win over AC Milan in the Champions League. Mbappe opened the scoring against Milan in the 32nd minute with a driven shot into the bottom corner. And second-half goals from Randal Kolo Muani and Lee Kang-in secured all 3 points for the French champions. The hosts are now 2 points above Borussia Dortmund. And Newcastle United suffered the first defeat of their Champions League campaign as Borussia Dortmund secured a vital victory on a rain-soaked night at St James Park 1-0. Eddie Howe's side started their return to Europe's elite competition in impressive fashion with a draw against AC Milan in San Siro before a memorable thrashing of Paris Saint-Germain on Tyneside. Newcastle, however, could not recover that some intensity while Dortmund baileyed their status as Group F's bottom side prior to the game with an impressive display and secured victory through Felix Nemecha's composed finish in first half added time. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.